Sure. Actually, visiting China has always been a dream for myself since I was a child. When I was a student, I had the opportunity to stay in India for several months. And then later, when I started my career, I worked for 2 years in Thailand. So I was going on the way to China. But China at that time was a very closed country. It was difficult to go there. Later, when I was an agronomist working in Belgium, I had the opportunity to visit China in 1999 at the occasion of the first international conference on crop protection and fertilization. At that time, I visited China and could present the work we did on potato. Actually, I didn't know China was the first producer of potato in the world, but I discovered that at that time because I met a Chinese agronomist who unfortunately died a few years ago, Mr. Professor Xie Kaiyun. And this gentleman explained me that the most important problem of potato in China was late blight. Late blight is a disease attacking potato worldwide. And fortunately, we have not completely solved, but we have a good solution to reduce the damages of that disease in Henan province. And by discussing with this Dr. Xie Kaiyun, we came to the point that it was a real important opportunity to collaborate to develop a collaboration between China and Henan province. So we started a few months later, and since that time we have been exchanging several times every year. We go to China, or Chinese agronomists come to visit us, and we have a very long history of collaboration. We can call it a collaboration headquarter or something like that, because Wuxi is a remote county. It's a poverty county in Chongqing. It is located high in the mountain, and farmers depend very much on potato in that area. Their main food is potato. Every farmer is eating potato several times every day, just like rice in other places in China, and just like bread in Belgium, like potato in Belgium also. So most Belgians eat a lot of potato too. So in Wuxi, potato is very important, and Wuxi is very poor. Developing and improving the potato production in Wuxi was very important. So we focused on that area to start our first collaboration, and the results were very good. So we could control quite well the epidemics of late blight. So it means the damages on the potato crop were much reduced, and a lot of farmers could have better income because of that. Further, we also developed an integrated approach of potato crop. It means trying to improve the quality of the seed potatoes, and also trying to improve the fertilization and the care to the soil, because of course the crop is important, but the soil is bearing the crops. If you have no good soil, the crop cannot benefit correctly. And for the moment, China is focusing very much to control agricultural pollution, and these pollutions are generally generated by pesticides on one side. This is to control the diseases, for example, and by fertilizer, actually excess of fertilizer or imbalanced fertilizer. So what we try to do is to improve the appropriate use of pesticides, use pesticides only when it is necessary and for good results. And on the other side is use fertilizer on a balanced way. It means the right fertilizer in the right amount, which is very important. And this can contribute very much to reduce pollution, agricultural pollution in China. Wuxi Potato Engineering Research Center. Oh yes, okay. So in 2016, we started actually a real formal collaboration with Wuxi, and the provincial deputy president of our center visited Wuxi and signed the agreement with the governor of Wuxi County, and so was established the Wuxi Potato Engineering Research Center. Of course, it was a big surprise and a great honor. I mean, it's just incredible that a modest agronomist from a small center located in the middle of Europe reached this kind of result. What is very impressive for me is that it is a demonstration of the importance that China is putting into the development of agriculture, and especially for agriculture in poor areas, because potato is not the crop that you grow in the richest part of China. Potato is grown in remote counties, in poverty area, in dry or mountainous area. So I think it's quite interesting to see that amongst those experts who have influenced China, one of them is somebody who has been working in quite remote and poor area in the west of China most of the time. So I'm a privileged witness of China's development in the last 20 years. Indeed, since the very first year I traveled to China, of course I visited Beijing, then later I visited Shanghai, Wuhan, Zhengzhou and other very important cities. But most of my time I spent in remote countryside, especially in Chongqing area. I directly, during my second visit to China in 2000, I directly went to spend several days in Wuxi County, so that remote places I told you before. At that time, it was really looking like a very underdeveloped country, or developing country. The roads were very poor. It was we needed 2 days to reach the Wuxi from Chongqing. One day by boat on the Yangtze River, then another day by jeep on the small mountain road. So it was really difficult. Now the town of Wuxi was a very small town with little facilities, very low standard hotel and this kind of thing. But the people were very hardworking and like in most places in China, they have achieved huge change in the last 20 years. So now Wuxi has become a beautiful little city with bright roads and a nice center. And you need only 6 hours by highway to reach Wuxi from Chongqing. So I think no country could achieve results like that in the development of infrastructure. And those infrastructure are directly useful for everybody, for the whole population. So this is the major reasons why in most, not all, but most of the remote areas in China, now the standard of life increased so much. There is no comparison anymore.
Do you have anything to say to us?
Happy birthday, and wish you much success in the next 20 years to remove completely poverty and probably be a leader of the world in many aspects. I think Western people do not recognize enough the achievements of China, especially in the rural area. Of course, we know a lot about the industrial development, and of course there are also progress that can be made in that industrial development. But I think if you compare with the countries that were at the same level 20 or 40 years ago. Yes, let's take it 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, if you compare countries like China, but also India, maybe Nigeria or Congo, Brazil, and check now where are those countries. I'm sure China really had the best results. And especially regarding the standard of life of the major part of the population, now there is no hesitation. China did really the best. So it's a good lesson. We should follow example of China for many things. So my name is François Cernels. The first part is a French part. François means Frenchman. So half of my name is French, and the Cernels is a Dutch name. It's my family name. So Belgium is a small country, located between the Netherlands and France. I was born in Belgium in 1959, and I studied as what we call an agro-engineer. It means that I studied both agriculture, animal husbandry, and everything that is necessary for rural development, like construction, machinery, economics, and this kind of thing. When I finished my studies, I really was willing to visit China, but as you know, China was very closed at that time. So I made some experience in other countries like India and Thailand. And when in 1999 there was an opportunity for me to visit China, of course I took this opportunity, and I would never have imagined that I could develop so many activities with Chinese colleagues. And really it was amazing it had an amazing effect on my personal life, because for the moment I really spent much time trying to develop more collaboration with China. I must have been to China more than 45 or maybe even 50 times, because every year I go at least twice. Every year I go to make a study tour with a group of students, something like 25 or 30 students. We visit Chongqing area, but we also visit countryside mostly, because there are students studying agriculture. And then every year I do at least one kind of expert mission, mostly for training agronomists in China. So at least twice during 20 years, that's at least 40 times. And sometimes I go 2, 3, 4 times. I just come back from China. I was there 2 weeks ago. I visited 4 provinces, and we are still trying to develop some additional projects. So I'm very proud that we can continue adding new projects to what we do already. The most recent news is that we'll try to develop some collaboration in the field of cheese making. So making cheese is a specialty of northwestern Europe. And then Southern Europe also. But China is very famous for tofu, soya bean cheese. The two techniques are very similar, but there is no tradition of making cheese in China. But there is a market for that, and there is a demand. Therefore, it's a good idea, I think, to develop. And production of milk is increasing, so why not develop cheese production? Another very interesting point is that, as I told you, I organize every year a study tour for Belgian students, sometimes also some foreign students who are studying in our school. So I take every year about 25 to 30 Belgian students to visit Chongqing. So we do not go to visit Beijing and Shanghai or a very important touristic area. We go directly to the countryside. We also go to visit schools. Secondary schools, universities, even primary schools sometimes, and it helps our young people to understand in deep China. And by connecting directly with some other Chinese students or some Chinese farmers, they understand much better what is the real life in China, and they also become, to some extent, friends of Chinese people. Some of them get really stuck to it, like Cyril, who is now working in our team. So he traveled with his class to China, and then later we could recruit him to work in China to develop some project in collaboration with the seed potato growers in Inner Mongolia. But the most important is that this contributes to a better understanding between young European and young Chinese or only Chinese. Because the biggest difficulty in the relationship between China and the West is linked to the very deep difference in the culture and the language, which makes it, the brain is really working differently. And the idea the Chinese people and the European people are building their behavior on, so those ideas are so different that sometimes there are misunderstandings. And it is very important that young people start as early as possible to experience the direct contact with the Chinese youth, for example. And when they are together, it's very easy to mix them, and they can enjoy a lot of communication, and they exchange very easily. But in the beginning it is difficult. The first step is difficult. Then once you start it becomes much easier. Once you have a little bit habit, or a little bit, you become a little bit familiar with the way Chinese people behave, and for Chinese with the way the Western behave. And once it is starting, then it becomes much easier, and you can build up a better relationship. So it's very important that young people do that, because I'm nearly 60, so my future is in my back already. But their future is in the coming years, and they will have to build up good relation between China and Europe, for example. And I think for the moment, China and Europe have a huge role and a huge responsibility in building a peaceful world and a developing world. One point that impressed me very much is although sometimes it appears to us that some measure may be surprising, so some policies and some implementation measures may seem strange. Sometimes we find, for example, in the agricultural policies there are some inefficiency. But at the same time, I must recognize that in no other country I have ever seen results building up so fast. It means that when I visit in the first year, I visited Wuxi, as I told you. The next year, Wuxi had already improved very much. And the next year, Wuxi had again improved a lot. And then I visited other places. And in every place I visit, I always see the things become better and better and better and better. Of course, sometimes there are mistakes. Sometimes there are things that are not working. And then when we go there, we think, oh, we should improve that and we should improve that. But globally, the improvement is so generalized that is something which is very impressive. And I think it is partly linked to a policy of regular evaluation of the results. It means you set up objectives and you try to reach them. And for any reason, if you don't reach them, you try to find out a solution to reach them. And that is something I think we should learn from China, a culture of kind of results. Of course, it is easier to identify the objective when the level of the country is a little bit low. In China, it's easy. If you want to have a very clear target, you first try to reduce poverty. That's clear. So in Europe, we don't have this kind of clear target. It's a pity, because we should have this kind of clear target. That's a good lesson also for us. There is another very interesting point, is that our collaboration, in the beginning, it was just a collaboration in one direction. It means that we were injecting some knowledge into Chinese agriculture. But first of all, we gained a lot of experience by using our systems in China and applying there. We learned a lot. But the most interesting is that after working a few years together, the Chinese colleagues that were collaborating with us started bringing their own contribution. And especially, we are a small center and we are not very experts in dealing with the computer science, but our system can be improved by automatizing, by making automatically a lot of computing, because we need a lot of data, especially weather data, for example, and the geographic data to deal with the management of and the control of the potato disease. And the Chinese colleagues, when they saw us working almost by hand and by using very basic system of computer, they suggested us to improve it and to make it automatically. And they started working on it. And now, after a few years, they have developed the application based on our system, our model. So we have a model describing the development of the disease, but they have computerized it and made automatically made automatic the decision system that is provided by the model, actually. So why is it important? Because when we do that at our scale in Belgium, so we are working with about 800 farmers. It's a very small number. But if you want to make the same application for Chinese farmers, you do it in about 10 different provinces. We don't talk about a few hundred farmers. We talk about a few 100 million farmers, or a few 100,000 farmers at least. And of course, the system that we are using cannot be the same. For communication, we need another tool. And so the Chinese colleagues have developed the tool. So now they have provided us with the computerized system, and we are able to use it in Belgium, but that's not so important because the size is not big. But we are also trying to develop it in other countries now. In November, I will probably go to India to try to export this technology also. India is the second largest potato producer. And we already have projects for Morocco and for other areas. So it's very important to see that by sharing technology, we bring part of the information and Chinese brought another part of the technology. We mix that and we get better tool for everybody. And so it's to the benefit of all, actually.